let me down.
What are some huge green flags that are often overlooked? When someone is quick to give credit and slow to place blame. Such a great sign that someone will celebrate other people and appreciate or acknowledge them, and will be really kind and benevolent when something bad happens.
Quote, when someone is quick to give credit and slow to place blame. This has worked really well for me in my career. As programmers, we deal with a lot of complexity, confusion, and not well-written legacy software. It's easy to make mistakes without realizing it right away, and some things are complex enough that none of us grasp the entirety of them. Immediately blaming someone else when there's a failure often backfires, because it could have been your past mistake that's only manifesting itself now. There are plenty of cases where fixing one bug causes another bug to surface. And it could be mine. So I'm very slow to assign blame to anyone, unless, as Kaladin says, I realize that it's truly my mistake. Then I'm happy to say it was mine. I always like to give credit where it's due, because we have difficult jobs and everyone can use the recognition. I've found that the people who steal credit from others are usually less competent.
That the person is actually listening to you.
I was seeing a guy recently and I told him I was feeling anxious about something. We spent 5 minutes having a sort of argument about whether I should be anxious about this situation. Then he stopped talking and said, "This clearly isn't working, let's try it differently," and asked me to start the conversation again. I was a bit confused, but the second time, instead of arguing, he asked me questions about how I was feeling and why. I really opened up and realized some things I hadn't thought of before. That's a good listener.
He sounds like someone who can adapt.
When you're talking with someone and they remember what you're talking about or were talking about at one point. Another one is when they remember that you've done certain things with them and bring it up from time to time. Other than that, it's the normal stuff that shouldn't be overlooked, or the little things, I guess.
Quote, they remember what you're talking about or were talking about at one point. Okay, so I have a very good memory, and I tend to remember even the most insignificant stuff someone tells me, even something like a throwaway conversation or a fact about themselves they mentioned in passing. Stuff that those people themselves probably forgot they told me right after they told me. Occasionally, those things will come up in conversations sometime later, and the response very often is, "Wait, how do you know that?" I was told several times to my face that that's creepy, that it makes people feel like I'm stalking them. So I stopped doing it. I pretend like I don't remember most things people tell me, even though I remember very well that Clara has a dentist appointment on Wednesday and Joey had to change a light bulb 2 nights ago. Not saying you're wrong, but too good a memory can backfire from time to time.
Haha, I know this feeling. I sometimes just act like I don't know something to hide the creepy fact that I remembered such an insignificant detail. Meanwhile, I also am able to forget what I ate for dinner 4 hours ago.
I had a guy tell me one time all about how excited he was to get to see his daughter, Grace, the following weekend. I worked as a bartender. After that weekend passed and he came in, I asked, "Did you have a good weekend with Grace?" And he proceeded to say I was a psycho stalker and to never let his kid's name come out of my mouth again. Yep, buddy, my bad for being nice.
When they show genuine interest in you or what you're doing, they listen to you go on and on about beat they don't care about and don't understand because they know you enjoy talking about it.
One of my good friends is in a new relationship after being single for the last 4 years or so. Holy hell, it's all he ever talks about now, and the guy talks a lot. It used to be all fishing, hunting and stuff like that. That being said, I listen because he's never been happier in my opinion. Has never been an emotional guy, but he's getting there now, which tells me he really likes her. I'm stoked for him even though it means I never see him anymore.
My best friend recently got into her first relationship, and it's the same scenario. Laugh out loud. It's 99 of what she talks about, but I love seeing her so happy.
It feels good knowing they're truly happy. He was never in a bad place, but seeing him raise himself to an even better place is awesome.
My boyfriend will sometimes be upset and start a sentence with "well you," and then takes a second and starts over with "I feel." I notice every time, and I try and be the same way.
I remember learning about this in elementary school, and they were referred to as iMessages. The goal is to focus on explaining how something is making you feel versus telling the other person what they are doing and assigning meaning to their action for them. I feel lonely when you're on your phone while I am talking to you. Versus why do you always ignore me when I am talking to you? I remember thinking it was really stupid as a kid, but as an adult it's something I have remembered. I can be a little hot-tempered, but I try to do this when I get in an argument with my spouse.
I learned in couples therapy to not say you always or you never or the inverse I always or I never, because there really isn't an always or never, and it creates an impasse, because there's no room for defense in a blanket statement like that.
If I'm mad about something, you basically becomes off limits. There's no quicker way to get someone defensive than to imply something is their fault by saying you insert literally anything, even if you don't actually mean to attack them. And once they're on the defensive, that conversation is going nowhere. It's really difficult to own up to my feelings and say I feel. But I've always found it leads to much less conflict.
Admitting when they don't understand something and asking questions about it until they do. A few years ago I was at a party with a friend of mine, and another friend of a friend who is a physicist who worked for a startup that produced specialized magnets for quantum computing. My friend asked the startup guy about his work, and he explained it, and everybody else in the room just nodded and acted like they knew what he was talking about. But she said, "I don't understand, can you explain that a different way?" And he did, and then she kept asking questions for quite a while, and by the end of it we actually all did understand what his company did instead of just being polite and pretending we did, and it was super interesting. A couple of people thanked her afterward basically for having the self-confidence to admit she didn't have any clue what he was talking about and not being afraid it would make her look dumb, because the rest of us were all content to pretend we knew instead of actually taking the initiative to find out. I respected her so much for that.
I feel like so many people stopped asking questions because of bad experiences in school. I remember asking my math teacher a question and her just shutting me down and never answering me, or one teacher would just spell dictionary every time we asked her how to spell a word. Come on, how the hell am I supposed to find it in a dictionary when I don't know what the first letter is? I only had one teacher that went out of her way to make sure we had plenty of time to ask questions and would research answers in her spare time if she didn't know it and get back to us. Mrs. Pierce, wherever you are, you gave me back the confidence to ask questions, and I'm forever grateful.
God, yes. My ex almost never did this, and it made it impossible to have interesting conversations.
Learns the small things about you.
My boyfriend remembered my shoe size after mentioning it one time in some random conversation with someone else. When my shoes started falling apart, he just showed up with a new pair, also having remembered that my favorites are black on black Chucks, another random convo about never being able to find what I like at Ross. He also bought me a new pair when I complained about my feet hurting. Wasn't even due to my shoes really, just a result of working 16 hours a day. He knew my dress size and surprised me with a couple really nice ones. It's also just really nice that he knows my style and tastes. Everything he has bought me has fit perfectly and I think they're stunning. I was with my ex for 4 years, and when he surprised me with a new pair of shoes over 3 years, and I was kind of shocked at how not me they were. The guy had known me for 13 years altogether, and I was like, seriously, have you ever seen me in white sneakers? He bought me things he would have liked me to wear, not things that I would like. Edit because I want to add that I was totally appreciative of the ex buying me shoes, even if they were something I would never buy for myself. I really didn't even say anything to him about them other than to thank him and tell him how sweet it was. Just reread the comment after a response and figured someone might think I was a d*** about it. Laugh out loud.
I remember being confused about gifts that were not really me. Then I realized most of them were based on the idea of me being a generic person with standard tastes. Which is okay, but confusing when I have previously spoken about my preferences. It made me wonder if my exes even knew or cared who I was.
People are shit at gift giving. Or they just want you to change something and the gift is a subtle message to nudge you that way. I'm a collectioners. I collect funny and punny t-shirts, same kind of mugs. I have the goal to own every single Disney movies on DVD or Blu-ray, and a pair of Converse in every color. Oh, and I love reading, so any book is good news to me. Also, I have the dream to own a library like in Beauty and the Beast. You'd think I'm an easy person to gift. Last time someone gifted me something from the above list was 3 years ago. However, I've tons of girly beauty products and some are even more expensive than the Converses, so it isn't a money issue.
They're afraid of getting you something you already have.
Ding ding. This is not because they're bad at gift giving, they just don't want to give you the things you own already. Hobbyists are obviously far deeper into the community and know what's surface level and what's actually good.
General mindfulness, the little things you don't really notice if you don't pay attention. Pushing a chair in after sitting in it, asking questions and being involved with you. You can learn a lot about somebody by paying attention to how they listen, and having a partner that listens is an absolutely amazing feeling. There is a huge gap between being aware of what you're saying and understanding what you're saying. A good listener is priceless.
I never thought about this until I reconnected with an old friend who told me that I was a good listener. His words are seared into my memory because they made me feel so proud and appreciated. Quote, "You always made me feel heard, like what I had to say was important. You weren't just waiting for your turn to talk." We didn't actually hang out a whole lot, but if we ran into each other at a party or something, we were stuck on each other and would literally talk until the sun came up. Some people you just really connect with.
When someone admits to their mistakes/owning up to it and does not make an excuse for failing, but trying to better themselves through that experience, being positive about it.
I do this constantly. It has made me a more credible and respectable person. The logic is, when I'm wrong, if I admit it, I instantly become right and will never be wrong that way again.
It's seriously weird how that's hard for people. 2 hours ago at work I made a mistake. You shouldn't do that. I was told. Can you explain why? That was my first question. You tell me I made a mistake, explain. And hey, I learned something. It's an attitude thing, I think. I expect people to f**k up. It's what people do. People make mistakes, forget things, etc. I just had a guy call with an issue. My colleague had said he would have solved last week. He didn't. I expect these f**k-ups. Others send out 1,000 invoices and want them all paid on time and get angry when this is not the case. I expect that at least 20 will not be paid on time, because statistics.
Ego and social expectations. People judge you for being incorrect. You lose respect of stupid people. If stupid has influence, it's compounded. Ego protects you from mean and or stupid, so controversy delays or nullifies repercussions.